It's become pretty evident in recent years that people have some less than complicated feelings when it comes to visual effects in movies, because either they hate them or they love them. So who's right? Hey, are y'all sure you have the same daddy? 'Cause...
What the?
Hello and welcome to What the Film. I'm your host Nathaniel. Let's get into it. To fully understand your own feelings about VFX, it's important to understand what's going on with visual effects in the first place. Because to love something or to hate something without knowing really anything about it is probably bad. The first one sounds like stalking, and the second one sounds like a boy who's very proud. So first, we will explore just what the heck we mean when we even say VFX. It's one of those terms that can mean different things to different people, like family, or love, or pet. We also need to look at where this stigma and hate for VFX is even coming from and how it all got started in the first place. From there, we should be able to determine whether or not VFX are in fact good or evil. And then at that point, I can tell you how you should feel. I mean, not tell you how you should feel, but mostly, yeah, tell you how you should feel. What do I mean when I say VFX? How is that different from SFX or CGI? Where does Monsters, Inc. fit into all of this? I will answer all of those in order. I'll also try and keep this simple, despite this being a somewhat complicated issue. The industry standard definition of VFX, or visual effects, are effects that are done in post or during editing. This would exclude the category of effects that are done on set or in camera, practical effects, miniatures, rear projection, forced perspective, etc. Both of these categories fall under the umbrella of SFX, or special effects. CG, or CGI, computer-generated images, fall under the umbrella of VFX. Now I know what some of you are thinking. I thought CG and VFX were interchangeable. In some circles, people do that, but they're not the same thing. CG means that it was made from nothing, or rather, generated on a computer. This would be your dragons, or giant waves, or blue hedgehogs. Not that one. The other one. Thank you. So what, VFX don't involve CGI? I mean, not necessarily, no. VFX can be anything from cloning people to merging two shots together to even just removing wires and rigs. Now, VFX can involve shooting on a blue screen, which would be merging CG and footage shot in camera. And Monsters, Inc. is CG animation. We're going to have to do a separate video on CG animation because that is a whole beast unto itself. Also, typically animation doesn't involve any footage shot in camera. Obvious exceptions aside. So there you go, a crash course in VFX. And now that you understand the basics, we can take a look at the bewildering stigma attached to visual effects. What happened? We used to love visual effects. Terminator, Jurassic Park, Titanic, even those weird scenes from Forrest Gump. Audiences were in lockstep with their appreciation for and fascination with visual effects. Then came a little indie film some of you may have heard of called The Matrix? Maybe? I don't know. Suddenly it feels like you're watching a movie that's being beamed in from the year 2042. Now the bar for VFX is raised higher than ever before. Studios and filmmakers alike are racing to not only do what The Matrix did, but also outdo The Matrix and be the next big standout in the VFX world. Soon we're at a point where we're getting a steady stream of visual effects-laden movies, mostly from Monopoly. I'm sorry, I mean Disney. I keep doing that lately, I don't know why. With this steady stream of effects-loaded movies, two major issues come to bear. Issue number one. Not only are visual effects ubiquitous among all the films, but also being used so much in each individual film that at some points it feels like you're watching a video game cutscene or a cartoon. And issue number two. The bar has been raised so high, it's practically in the stratosphere. So if your effects only measure up to Mount Everest, which is still pretty high, well, it's not the stratosphere and you're wasting all of our time with your garbage. And it's these two major issues that led to the stigmatization of visual effects and the average moviegoer saying they hate CG. Smash cut to today and you have people straight up lying about not having visual effects in their movies. Now, I do think some people are doing it because they want to avoid the stigma that I just gave a full oral report on. I'm not saying that's right or good, but I do get it. We live in a world of headlines and sound bites. No one has the patience to hear your nuanced explanation of the VFX in your movie, and you're afraid that they're just going to write it off because they hate CG. I do believe others are lying about it because they're just trying to protect a personal brand, and I don't get that. That's gross. It also doesn't make sense when your personal brand has already been watered down by overusing visual effects when you're doing your practical stunts. Now you know the basics, and you have an understanding of the stigma. But the question still remains. VFX, good or evil? Should we be wary of films that use visual effects? Is CGI played out? Should we return to an era of cinematic purism? No. No to all of that. Oh, so VFX are good then? Stop it. Visual effects are a tool. And like with all other tools, they are neither inherently good or inherently bad. A tool is a tool. Sometimes you use the wrong tool. Not every problem can be or needs to be solved with visual effects. But if you come from a visual effects background, that's probably your go-to solution. It's very when you're a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And that leads me to the fact that even if it's a good tool to use, maybe it's not the best tool. Maybe you just like that tool and you're overusing it. You can overuse a tool, just like with a J.J. Abrams lens flare, or Christopher Nolan sound mix, or James Gunn needle drop. For those of you that aren't 100 years old, needle drop refers to when people used to listen to albums on record players, and they had to take the device called the needle and drop it directly onto the part of the album that had the song that they wanted to listen to. And I only know this because I'm a bit of a music historian. You see, I'm quite young. I'm only years old. But back to tools. I know what you're thinking. If it's just a tool, then why do so many people say they hate CGI? Isn't that like saying you hate a Phillips head screwdriver? Or why are some people low-key obsessed with visual effects and CGI? Wouldn't that be like someone who collects needle-nose pliers? Am I supposed to pick a side? Is there a healthy medium? How am I supposed to feel? Don't worry, I got you covered. Visual effects are not your enemy. We may have gotten to a point as audiences where we're a little spoiled and unappreciative. We should thank our lucky stars we got the Captain America we did, and we're just left with the one from the 80s. The future is now. Anything that someone can dream of or think up, there's a visual effects artist who can make it happen. And let's not forget about the artists toiling away to make this all happen. Do not hate the artists. And that's not even all the VFX houses and the hundreds of VFX artists and the thousands of work hours that go into making a movie possible, but also the people that design the computer applications, filters, and plugins that even make all of these effects possible. Before someone was able to just push a button and add a water simulation to a movie, someone had to invent water simulations, or take simulating a black hole. The one from the movie Interstellar was designed using actual raw mathematical data from physicists. This led to VFX artists for a movie being the first people to accurately visually recreate a black hole? What? Also, when it comes to visual effects, you can't even spot it most of the time. It's being used to remove wires or extend backgrounds or for fake glass. You don't know. What happens is you spot a bit of wonky effects in a movie and you let it color your opinion of the entire film. or the entire art of visual effects? Or as Joe Farrell put it,
visual effects has a bad rap because anytime people see it, they go, oh, that looks bad. But that's the problem, is because you saw it, you think therefore it's bad. I guarantee you, if you were to see some of the projects that I've worked on, if you saw what we actually are doing to it, it would boggle your mind. Like, we are successful like 80% of the time. All you see is the 20% which we struggled on for these reasons. Basically, if you looked at the ratio, if let's say you had 100 shots and 87 of them were you didn't realize were there, that's a pretty good score in math. You know, if you're getting like 87, 90, people are like, wow, they're really good. But unfortunately, you see that 10% in visual effects and the audience is like, yeah, it's crap.
now that I've said that and I've reassured you that you should feel good about visual effects, it's time to tell you who you should be mad at. Studios. Obviously, you always follow the money. And when it comes to movies, that money leads you to studios, studio heads, board members, shareholders. Their main concern is recouping their investment, at minimum. The goal is to turn a profit. They are business people at heart. They don't care about movies or the art of filmmaking. And these business dildos invest a lot of money in marketing and a release date. This release date effectively becomes a concrete deadline. Whoever is last in the movie production pipeline tends to get screwed over because of this. And that just so happens to be editing and effects. So now that dumb production problems like inclement weather or an indecisive director or even just reshoots has eaten into all the post-production time, you're going to turn around and you give the VFX house 1 week to produce about 300 visual effects shot. An impossible task. When you see bad effects, don't blame the tool or the artist. Blame the studio that won't let them do their job or do it well in the first place. You see, the problem with even just 10 or 20% of the visual effects being bad in a movie is that that is participating in bad commerce. Like, if you went to a restaurant and you knew that every time you went to that restaurant 10 to 20% of the food was just going to be bad, you wouldn't go to that restaurant anymore. And all of this coming from studios that are encouraging people to lie about having VFX in the movies in the first place, which is not only insulting to the artists themselves, but also to the audiences that know better by now. So, VFX, good. Studio heads, bad. People act like modern visual effects are killing cinema. You know, the visual medium is somehow suffering from enhanced visual effects. In reality, if filmmakers of old had access to the technology that exists today, they would use it just the same as anybody else. Except maybe Michael Bay. I mean, what am I even looking at here? Wait, is that his insides? Oh my, I think I'm gonna be sick.